Hello and welcome back to the Starters, the 5-question podcast edition. I'm Dave Trentadue. That is George Caperis, and that is Mr. Simon Tsalikis. How's it going, boys?
What's going on, Dave?
Still wearing pants, Dave?
Not really, no. But it's okay. Upper half is looking good.
Got a hat there, Dave. Nice hat.
I do, yeah. It's just because my hair is terrible. So.
Okay.
All right.
I feel you.
Your hair is looking good. All right. So thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and subscribe to us on YouTube at The Starters 690. We're seeing a lot of support. A lot of those views are going up. So if you guys, feel free to jump in, answer the questions, give us a comment or a like, and share with your friends. We would greatly appreciate it. And don't forget to listen to Simon and Joey Alfieri every Saturday and Sunday, 7 to 9 a.m. on TSN 690. All right, question number 1, boys. Let's get to it. Brought to you, of course, by Club CDL. And Club CDL, of course, having a free trial of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at Club CDL with the boys of Renzo Gracie. It's a completely free trial. You can go sign up for the entire month of February for their classes. I saw there was 30 kids there the other night. So people are going, and it's fun. They start at the age of 5 and up. All right, question number 1, boys. We all watched the Super Bowl. Chiefs pulled it off in overtime. It was actually quite a great ending to the game. I just want to know your opinion. Did the Chiefs win, or did the Niners lose?
I'm gonna go with the Niners lost that game. There's a couple of things that I think that were. It's kind of like death by 1,000 cuts, and the first cut was the Christian McCaffrey fumble. You're establishing the run early in that game. You're running the ball. You didn't think maybe you'll be efficient running the ball. You are. And then your best player, not arguably, the best offensive player in the league, who was voted on this year, fumbles, dagger. Patrick Mahomes interception, 0 points off that. Missed extra point, massive. And I think the turning point in that football game, because that defense did have Patrick Mahomes in check up until that point, was the, I don't know what you want to call it, misdirection punt, muffed punt, whatever term you want to use. And then I think another glaring mistake was Shanahan electing to take the ball in overtime and giving Patrick Mahomes 4 downs to convert 10 yards. And I'll take my chances with Patrick Mahomes converting those 10 yards every single time. So I don't know, man. I think the Chiefs didn't play a brilliant football game. I thought for the first half they were flat. They had nothing to show for it. And then the Niners just simply did not capitalize. So, I know Mahomes played great coming down the stretch, but so did Brock Purdy. The last 3 times he touched the football, he put up points for the Niners. He put a touchdown. He put up 2 field goals. So at the end of the game, both quarterbacks did produce. It's just early in that game, the middle part of that game, the Chiefs just made big mistake after big mistake and didn't get to capitalize. So a little bit more on the Chiefs blowing this one than the Niners blowing this one than the Chiefs winning the football game.
Mm-hmm. George?
I've got to agree. 49ers kind of did all the little things wrong, right? And I mean, it accumulated. And at the end, they just couldn't overcome all the mistakes that were made. For sure, the turning point of that game is that punt and fumble, which absolutely turned the tides and gave a very, very short field to Pat Mahomes. And that's not the guy you want to give a short field to. I think they had so many chances to kind of put this game maybe at a little bit of out of reach for the Chiefs, in that you could tell Kelsey got into Andy Reid's face. There was arguing between Pat Mahomes and one of his receivers. So you could see that the pressure that the 49ers were putting on defensively was affecting the Chiefs. But it just seemed the Niners and all the mistakes that Simon just highlighted, unfortunately, unraveled at the end. And the most questionable of calls, I think, will be, why did they take the ball? Why? I'd love to hear the justification as to why Kyle Shanahan said, I'm going to take the ball here.
He said he spoke to his analytics throughout the week.
Yeah, I get that. But
I thought maybe defense was gassed. I get that, but
what worries me is more a lot of the players coming out after the game and the 49ers players saying they weren't aware of even the rules of of overtime, because the rules had changed, because last year's Super Bowl were different rules in that the first team scored a touchdown, the game would be over, and now both teams would get a shot at scoring even if the first team scored a touchdown. So I mean, that alone worries me. Why would one starter not know the rules? Like, and it wasn't one or two, it was many of the 49ers players saying, that they didn't know the rules, and that goes down to the 49ers not being prepared enough, and just little things, a lot of little things. I think even that extra point is huge, Simon. It's massive, 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 that, because they can't tie the game with a field goal. They have to score a touchdown, and that's huge. It's huge. So absolutely, I'm going to agree with Simon. I think the little things, led to the unraveling that is this Super Bowl for the 49ers. I'm sure they're going to kick themselves for what all these little mistakes that ended up happening. Still a good football team. I'd love to see if Brock Purdy survives this. That's what I want to see. Is he going to be the starter going forward?
All right, and we'll stick with the Super Bowl kind of and football with question number 2, brought to you by Cunningham's Pub, who are hosting their second annual Irish charity luncheon on March 14th. For $45, you can get a good meal of either fish and chips, Guinness Irish stew, or corned beef sandwich with beer or wine included. And $10 of each ticket goes to the Nova West Island. So a great cause over there. All right, so Chiefs, as we said, they won their second in a row, third within the Mahomes era. I just want to know, are they a dynasty?
I mean, at this point, I don't think there's any way to question this. They're absolutely a dynasty. If you win 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, and let's face it, they were almost at a 4th and 5th Super Bowl. So yeah, they're absolutely a dynasty. And they probably win 4 if the Bengals don't hit a hot streak and kind of beat them in the AFC Championship a couple years ago. So yeah, I mean, they are a dynasty. And what's incredible about the dynasty, I'm going to tell you right now, is I thought after their first Super Bowl and losing Tyreek Hill, that with this ensemble of, let's face it, mediocre receivers, other than Travis Kelce, who is probably a top 5 all-time tight end in the NFL, arguably, they didn't miss a beat. Pat Mahomes hasn't missed a beat. It's crazy. You draft a 7th rounder, he becomes your starting running back. Andy Reid seems to somehow find these guys, and his system seems to work no matter who they're playing. The Kansas City Chiefs somehow, some way, have found a way every single year to not only be competitive, but to put themselves on the top of the heap. So yeah, absolutely. I think looking back on it in 10 years from now, 20 years, 30 years from now, they're a dynasty. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, look, it's a massive number, and it's also 6 consecutive AFC Championship games, a couple of losses, one to Joe Burrow, one to Tom Brady in his late years with the Patriots, and how close anything can happen in Super Bowl. The game against the Eagles, it came down to one single play. Last Sunday, it came down to one single play. But I think just the number of wins, the AFC Championship game appearances, and, especially this year, right? It was, okay, let's see what they do. They lost the opening game of the year to the Lions. They lost to the Raiders on Christmas Day. And then the new thing, the trendy thing is, can Patrick Mahomes win on the road? Yes, clearly. He beat the Dolphins, and then he went on to beat 2 of the best teams in the National Football League on the road. And I think that's what makes you special, right? And they are that. Maybe look, man, maybe they're not there with the Habs teams of the 70s and the Islanders of the 80s, and maybe Jordan 6 and 8. I get that, but we know that it's a lot more difficult to win it now in the National Football League than it's ever been with any sport. Like the great teams of the 70s, the Habs didn't have to deal with free agencies. Guys weren't coming and plucking their assistant coaches, and maybe they were, but not at the rate it is when you're a championship football team. You finish first place in your division. You have a more difficult strength of schedule going into the next season than anybody else in your division. People are hunting for you. They're coming after your coordinators. They're coming after your best players like Tyree Hill. Matt Nagy was there. He was gone. Eric Bieniemy is there. He's gone. And they continue to be very competitive and the ultimate football team. So, maybe they're not up there with the greatest just yet, but it doesn't look like their run is done. And what scares me, if I'm a team in the AFC, or if you're a team of the Cowboys or, the Patriots, and they start coming for your big numbers, or the Steelers, in an absolutely loaded AFC, and then the best team, I think, up until last Sunday, the best team in the league, pretty much flawless, and they get through all of that, and 2 of the games are on the road. If you can't get them this year, not sure when you're going to get them.
Yeah, good point, man. One of my favorite things is Patrick Mahomes has gone to the AFC Championship every single season as a starter. Like, that's just crazy to me.
And in a pretty competitive AFC, man.
Yeah, it's a good era too. I mean, just unreal. So yeah, definitely a dynasty. All right, question number 3. We'll move on. We'll turn to the Habs in just a bit. First, we'll have to tell you it's brought to you by EA Fitness. EA Fitness has a 7-day free trial right now. You can follow them on Instagram, EAFitness_.inc. And they have a 7-day free trial. You just have to go to eafitness.ca, sign up, and no matter what, you could do group trainings, you could do single trainings, 7 days, absolutely everything is free. So that's absolutely awesome. So follow them on Instagram, eafitness.inc. All right, guys, Canadiens games. They just lost this evening to the Rangers, getting maybe a little bit more tough to watch. Monahan's been dealt already. So I just want to know, what is your guys' why? Like, why are you turning into the Habs games going forward?
Listen, I think it's just to see the top lines. Slavkovsky tonight against the Rangers, another goal, another assist. So I think his point streak goes up to 7 or 8, which ties Doug Wickenheiser for the most by a Canadiens player as a teenager. You want to see Nick Suzuki again, I think 2 more points tonight. So that track for him to be a player, an 82-point player when it's all said and done. He's on track for that. Cole Caulfield struggled at the beginning of the year when it came to his goals, and he's scoring now at a pretty decent pace. So I tune in to watch that top line. I tune in, and most nights I think Sam Montembeault could be a number 1. I watched pretty much every minute of today's game against the Rangers, and I question whether or not he can be another one, although I think the blue line in front of him was a lot worse than Montembeault was tonight. Mike Matheson, you want to see how that continues. And Caden Gooley too, I think is a big part of this team going forward. So I just want to see these guys play. I also want to take a look at, it's Josh Ottawa today. Maybe it's Logan Mailloux in a couple of weeks from now. Maybe it's Lane Hudson at the end of the year for a cup of coffee. So a couple of these young players. And also very, as I watch this, I want to see the I give a damn factor. I want to see guys that are, maybe Jake Evans looking for a job next year in the National Hockey League. Pizzetta, Armia, 1 year left on his deal. See what he wants to bring to the table. Brendan Gallagher after that terrible suspension. I want to see which guys show up because I believe the schedule is going to flip here on the Canadiens starting tonight. I think they have the 4th most difficult stretch in the National Hockey League when it comes to strength of schedules. So I want to see who gives what can I say, Dave? Can I say the S word? Can I say poo?
Hey, whatever you want.
I won't say. Who gives a poo and who comes to bat every night, even when the goal totals, the goal differential on the scoreboard is not in your favor.
George?
So, look, I'm going to say I've been pretty critical of the Montreal Canadiens, for the entirety of this season and this show. And it's hard to watch a game and not feel the sort of dread that is this season. However, if I'm going to tune in, and I do tune in sometimes, unfortunately, it is to see exactly what Simon said, the development of these players and the guys that we know are going to be the core of the team going forward. Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Gooley. We know these guys are going to be the core of the team. And there's a silver lining here somewhere in the last couple of weeks as these players seem to have hit their stride. We kind of talked about it off air, Dave and I. We talked about how these games are sort of, kind of no one really cares what's going on if the Canadians score 3 or 4 goals when the game's out of hand like it is tonight. But they're still getting those goals. And Simon and I can remember a dark time of Montreal Canadiens hockey in the early 2000s where it was barely watchable, where you had, Juha Lean playing and guys that are of no consequence. There's some hope. And right now, I'm going to watch for hope, and I'm going to watch for the development of these guys. I mean, that's really why I'm going to tune in, because I'm hoping they gel together. I'm hoping this core is enough to build around, and that the Montreal Canadiens can start to put it together beginning next year. So, hope, development.
I also want to keep an eye on the coach, too. Today was a brutal 7-4 loss. Just
Brutal.
Just the turnovers, the lackadaisical play, guys tapping in pucks into open nets.
There's going to be more of that, though. I think there's going to be more of it.
I want to see how the coach handles that. I want to see, I like Martin St. Louis. I think he's the right guy for this. Look what he's done since he's taken over with Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Slavkovsky this year. They're looking like exactly what a top line's supposed to look at. There's a lot of positive there. But I also want to see when he has to be the bad guy. And he has to sit a guy for a game, or even more so when he sits a guy for, 18 minutes in the third period. Because guys on the blue line today were brutal. And I'm looking to see how the coach is going to handle, having to be the bad guy here over the stretch of 30 games.
I like it. All right. Well, speaking of bad guys, we'll move on to our next question. Question number 4, brought to you by Fresh MTL. Fresh MTL. If you go to freshmtl.ca, a little roulette kind of pops up like this. And all you could do, I don't know if you can see it, but anyways, all you got to do is you spin the wheel, and you could win 30 free meals. You could win 10% off, 5% off, or even $50. You could save $50 off your next meal. So I highly recommend you go check them out. They're healthy options, healthy food. You can meal prep. You could customize your own thing by weight and by whatever nutritional value you want on their website. It's absolutely cool. And they're on Uber Eats right now. So check them out, freshmtl.ca. All right, guys. Morgan Rielly suspended 5 games last week, or earlier this week, I guess, for cross-checking Rielly Gregg after that slapping that puck into the empty net. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. There was a lot of hot takes on X and Twitter and all sorts, and everyone had an opinion on it. So I just want to know, guys, what you guys think. 5 games for Morgan Rielly. Is that fair?
So listen, I know Simon for 20 years almost now, so I know we're gonna go at it here. Okay,
Ooh,
I'm putting the preface on right now that we're gonna have differing opinions on this, and like Bruce Buffer said, let's get ready to rumble. So look, I absolutely think Morgan Rielly is 100% in the wrong. I really could care less what NHL players think or not. I know I don't play hockey. I never played in the NHL. I never will. I understand that the players are the people we watch, but the hockey as a whole is one of the sports that's having the least amount of growth, even compared to the MLS. And one of the reasons is because it is so archaic. It is archaic in the way it's kind of handled. The fighting has no more any place in the game as far as I'm concerned, and that kind of changed for me when I had my own son and he started playing hockey, and I don't want to see him fighting on the ice with skates on his feet. And so for me, the whole thing is just I don't get it. I don't get why the players want to have this weird, like, you can't do that, you can't take a slap. Who the hell cares? Take a slap shot in your net. Like, you don't want him to take a slap shot in the net, don't let him do it. That's all. Like, don't go hit him after, and like, we're protecting the code and this. I have no time for this anymore. It's like, well, it's not 1973. We're not gonna have Mike Milbury go into the stands and beat someone with his shoe. We're not there anymore. And
those are great times.
Yes, those were great. They were great times, though. I will agree with you there, Simon. We're 100% on board. Those were great times. Okay, and you know what? I get it too, though. I get it. The players are the most important thing in this game, and I get it. They want to protect their game. They want to protect what they believe is right. but also we got to evolve here. We got to move on, guys. We got to get to something a little bit better. We got to, the viewership alone is telling you that we got to do something different. So Morgan Rielly going to go pummel a guy after he took a slap shot into an empty net. I'm sorry. I'm just not for it. I don't get it. I'm not going to defend it. Even 5 games seems a little lenient, but I get they're going to go on the case law, if you want, of what has happened in the past. So it is what it is, but I have no time for this anymore.
Right.
So what's fascinating about this play is I don't have a problem with what anybody did. The only problem I have is that Morgan Rielly caught him in the head with the high stick. Like if he comes across the shoulder area and then he drops the gloves and he ragdolls him a little bit, because Morgan Rielly's not a fighter, right? Maybe he pounds him in the back of the head and the back of the helmet more for show than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Having this discussion.
True.
But the part is that I think the NHL got it wrong with Brendan Gallagher and they got it wrong with Morgan Rielly, is that the head is off limits. I just watched a great NFL playoffs. I don't believe I saw one roughing the passer when it came to a guy jumping onto a quarterback and then allowing his entire body weight to fall on top of that quarterback, because they learned. It's a 15-yard penalty, fresh set of downs. So if those guys can learn, I think the guys in the National Hockey League learn. But that being said, I don't have a problem with what Rielly did. And I don't understand why people are so angry about the code. The code exists. For those who don't know, I'm a full-time real estate broker. There are unwritten rules in my industry. For those that don't know, George is a full-time police officer. He probably is in a world, like I had Eric Macramel on the morning show today, a lawyer. Those two professions probably have more unwritten rules and code than probably any 2 other professions. And Dave, in your industry, I'm sure there's something that one guy can't do, one company can't do to another, or it's frowned upon. Mm-hmm. So let's stop. Like, I don't get, and I don't want to use this stupid term, but like these keyboard warriors complaining about the code in another industry. If I'm pitching and Dave Trentadue is on first base and Dave's team is up 10-0 and it's the top of the 9th and Dave steals second base, there are going to be consequences and repercussions. The people who don't follow baseball can yell and scream and cry all they like. They're not in that industry. If you're up by 25 points, I can't remember which Golden State Warriors player did it about a couple of years ago, because Kevin Durant was still on the team. He stole a ball with about 40 seconds left in the game. The Warriors were up by 20. He went down the court, uncontested, 360 slam dunk. Kevin Durant got off the bench and looked and said, "What the F are you doing?" Because he knows, just like Claude Giroux knows, that there is a code out there. So I don't have a problem. Like, I can't tell those guys, no, I'm Simon Tsalikis. I work part-time at TSN 690. I'm a full-time real estate broker, father of 2 young girls. I don't want to hear about your code. I don't care if I'm not in your industry. I don't care if I'm not a player. You have to change your code. And the restaurateurs, no code for you guys either anymore. And you, the painters, no. Every industry has a code, and let the code. That's what it is, man. And there's certain things you can't and cannot do. Morgan Rielly got it wrong because he took the stick to the head of another individual. That, to me, is a no-go. That's the part that they have to clean up in the game. And other leagues have done it, like the Vontaze Burbick, excuse me.
Perfect.
He's gone. He's out of football. He's a dinosaur. He got chased out of football. He couldn't figure out how to play the game anymore without trying to kill people. They removed them from the National Football League. So I loved what Greg did. I loved what Morgan Rielly did. I can guarantee you one thing, George Caperis and Dave Trentadue, if me and you and the 3 of us were the 3rd line of the Toronto Maple Leafs and that happened, we'd be standing at the end of the bench going, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Every one of us would be doing it. So I can't get on this high horse, or people want to get on their soapboxes and start to talk about how righteous they are and this and that. You are. When you go back to your accounting and you go back to being a hairdresser, you go back to being a real estate broker, you're high and mighty, but you're not in the National Hockey League. There are things you can and cannot do. That's it. Are you allowed to punch somebody when they're down? George, you've been watching hockey since 1980. Are you allowed to punch somebody when they're down? No. When you punch somebody when they're down, there'll be consequences and repercussions. I don't have the NHL rule book, but I'm quite certain if I looked it up, there is no rule.
I get that, Simon, and I agree with you on that, on everything you said there. The one point though is that I kind of mentioned it, is the code has to evolve. The code has to kind of turn the page towards this century.
It has to evolve. Yes, it has to evolve.
And the code has evolved in baseball. We'll agree the code has evolved in baseball. The code has evolved in football, but the code doesn't seem to have evolved very much in hockey, and it needs to evolve. And that's more my point.
I could see what you're saying there. I don't know if the code has evolved or not. I think the code has evolved to the point that I don't think anybody enjoyed watching Morgan Rielly plant a stick in another guy's head. I don't think anybody enjoyed Brendan Gallagher chicken wing a guy in the head. From that standpoint, yes, the code needs to evolve. But I'm quite certain. See, like, I don't follow whoever I follow on Twitter. Most of the people are TSN 690 listeners or fans of the Habs, the Lakers, and the Bears. That's my community. That's who I follow. And a lot of people were outraged by what Morgan Rielly did. But I'm just wondering.
I'm not outraged by that.
But I'm not wondering. Wouldn't we have liked if Shea Weber did that to?
I'm not outraged. I'm outraged at the fact the NHL
after he collided with the.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
They didn't want the pound of flesh after Kreider knocked out and changed the trajectory of Carey Price's illustrious career.
We agree there.
I wanted him to get a beating. I was the only guy. I was the only guy in Montreal.
No,
go take Chris Kreider and pound him. I was the only guy. Must have been me by myself. That was the only guy that thought that. We all wanted to pound the flesh. That's how it works in pro sports. And when people talk to me about my kids, about this, I don't care about your kids. Your kids aren't playing pro hockey. Your kids play U9 or U12 or Bantam AA or AAA. I don't care. Don't bring children into the equation of pro sports, all right? Because there's a lot of things that we see on a nightly basis in pro sports that we would not be proud that our children are doing unless, of course, they happen to be NHLers.
We agree there. I just think if you look at football is the perfect example. Hits to the head were tolerated, hitting the quarterback, landing on the quarterback, and the league changed that. And the league made the players evolve and change the code. And there's none of that anymore. Even we don't see fist fights anymore. We barely see that anymore in football. Why? Because that's no longer in the code, because now you get suspended many, many games for doing this stuff. And that's what the NHL has to do. And that's how the code's going to evolve.
All right, guys. I mean, we can...
Is the code fine?
I like the code. But I mean, look, who am I to say? I could talk about this all night with you guys.
Remember when Colonel Jessup
ordered the code red?
He was outraged by Lieutenant Pete Mitchell asking, I think Pete Mitchell was the Maverick character. But anyway, when Jack Nicholson told Tom Cruise, the whole point of the movie is you're insulted about how I run a base that allows you the freedom to sleep at night. It's sickening. But that, like he said, that code red saved lives. Remember, he tells him when he's sitting on the stand there, as sickening as it may be to you, that code red saved lives. Now, it's a completely different thing. But again, just another industry that inside that industry, there's unwritten rules and regulations, man.
He also got arrested, though, at the end of the movie.
Bro.
Okay.
Let's freeze over that part.
All right.
Okay.
I can't remember the character's name, though, in A Few Good Men.
I don't remember.
Pete Mitchell was his name in Maverick and Top Gun.
I'll fact check and get back to
right.
I can listen to you guys fight about this all day. I think it's a fascinating topic, but we'll move on for the sake of keeping this quite kind of short. Question number 5, brought to you by Vivaldi Resto, the best bring your own wine restaurant in all of Montreal, located in the West Island. Tell Steve and Dave that the starters sent you and try their gnocchi gorgonzola. I promise you won't be.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
The best thing I've ever tasted, to be honest. All right. Question number 5, very, very simple. Which NHL team most needs to make a move at the deadline?
So a couple of nights ago, maybe more than a couple of nights ago, I was completely intrigued in watching Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Evander Kane play the Vegas Golden Knights, the defending Stanley Cup champions. I think the Oilers were maybe had lost the game, but they were on their heater. If they weren't 17-16 in a row, they had won 17 of 18 or 16 of 17, whatever it was. And the Vegas Golden Knights, I don't know. Look, and you're gonna have to get somebody else to break down the game better than I will. They sucked the life out of that hockey game. Connor McDavid, who I believe is the best player in the NHL and the best player of his generation. He'll go down as a Mount Rushmore player. 0. Leon Draisaitl, 0. And I just think, I don't think either of those two teams is going to catch. It's the Avalanche, right? In that division, they're the 1 seed. I don't think either catch the Avalanche. That's your first round matchup. I don't know what Ken Holland has to do. I don't know who. I can't even give you a suggestion. But that team is the kryptonite of the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers can run the Avalanche right off the rink. They can run the Canucks right off the rink. They can run the Leafs, the Panthers, the Bruins right out of the building for whatever reason. And somebody who knows hockey better than I do needs to dissect these games. And you saw it last year in the playoffs when the series wasn't really close. Vegas manhandles the Edmonton Oilers. I don't know what they need. So, Dave, I can't answer you the question of what they need, but they need to do something because they know today, February 15, 2024, they know highly likely, very likely, that the first round matchup is going to be against the Vegas Golden Knights. And the Edmonton Oilers simply can't beat them. They need something. Stay home defenseman, puck moving defenseman. They need somebody who produces at a higher level than Connor McDavid. They need 2 goalies. I don't know. They need to tweak that lineup to match up well against the Vegas Golden Knights.
All right, George.
So let's finish the first topic. Lieutenant Daniel Caffey.
That's right.
That's what it is. Yes. Yeah. Look, I mean, there's a bunch of teams that need to do something, but I think the desperation level now is at the highest it can be for the Pittsburgh Penguins, as they are in a what the heck do we do now? They got Jake Gunsel, that's a free agent. Do we keep him? If we keep him, well, you got to get some players to help so they can make a playoff push here, or they got to trade him. And they got to decide quick what they need to do, as they've got 2 aging superstars in Malkin and Crosby. That also, I mean, and Letang. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Pittsburgh does here, but they're the team that needs to do something, and they need to do something desperately, Simon. If they don't pull the trigger on something here, they're just going to miss the playoffs, and they're going to end up with 3 aging superstars and not much around them. Carlson too. We forgot Carlson.
Like, imagine that, 6 months ago or whatever it was, 7 months ago, they went and got Erik Karlsson. We fast forward to February 15th, and you're like, well, you got to do something else. I brought in the best getting defenseman of his generation. Like, well, they're not. Look, the team is flawed. It's just very flawed.
They're in big trouble. And they have a very small window here where they need to make their decisions, and Kyle Dubas is in such a difficult predicament, because he's got to decide on Gunsel, he's got to decide on Crosby, he's got to decide on Malkin, he's got to decide on Letang, and they're not easy decisions. These are franchise cornerstone players that are on the Mount Rushmore of the Pittsburgh Penguins franchise. So. When I look, there's a bunch of teams that are going to need to make a move to make some sort of push for either the Stanley Cup or to make the playoffs, but no one is in a more desperate situation than the Pittsburgh Penguins.
All right. Pittsburgh Penguins, and of course, you said the Edmonton Oilers, Simon. So those are your 2 teams to take a look at the NHL Trade Deadline. Thank you for listening, everyone. That wraps up the Starters podcast. Simon looks like he's going to go to sleep right now. He's early morning.
Call tomorrow.
Ooh, all right. So we'll let you go with that. Please don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube at the Starter 690. Thank you, boys.
Have a good day, guys.
Have a good one.